My name is Chloe, and I married the love of my life, Jack, a year ago. Our relationship was everything I could have ever imagined, loving, supportive, and full of laughter. I couldn't be happier with my family life. I worked from home as an accountant, which I enjoyed, but there was more to my career than met the eye. Jack ran his own car repair business, which kept him busy but gave us plenty of time together. We often attended parties with Jack's wide circle of friends and family. I always looked forward to these get-togethers with friends, coworkers, and business partners, enjoying the opportunity to mingle and be a part of Jack's world. One sunny Saturday morning, as I was drinking coffee and checking my emails, Jack came in beaming and kissing my cheek, saying, "Hey, beautiful." Mike was hosting a barbecue at his house, so I thought we could go over and have a few drinks and catch up with everyone. "That sounds perfect," I replied, already anticipating the evening we arrived at Mike's home around approximately 7:00 p.m. As we navigated through the crowd. I noticed a stunning blonde woman I had never seen before talking animatedly with a group of people. Her laughter carried across the yard. I asked Jack, who nodded in her direction, and his face tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's Vanessa, my cousin." Before I could reply, Mike saw us and waved us over to Jack and Chloe. "Let me introduce you to everyone." As we got closer to the group, Vanessa's eyes locked onto us. Her smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes well. She said, "If it's not Jack and his wife," the way she said wife made it sound like a dirty word. I forced a smile, determined not to let her get to me. "Nice to meet you, Vanessa," I said, extending my hand. "I'm Chloe." She looked at my hand as if it were covered in dirt before turning back to Jack. "Jackie, darling. It's been too long. You have to tell me everything you've been up to." I reacted negatively when she used the pet name, but Jack calmly interrupted. "It's good to see you, Vanessa. Flo, how about you still working at your dad's company?" Vanessa's smile wavered for a second, but she knew that I prefer to keep my options open, unlike some people, so I'm not tied down. The conversation went on in this manner for what seemed like hours. I tried to remain calm and collected while Vanessa made thinly veiled jabs at me while we were laughing over Jack, but by the end of the night, I was worn out. In the weeks after that initial encounter, I noticed that Vanessa was showing up more often at our social gatherings, and each time she seemed to go out of her way to make me feel awkward and out of place. One Friday night, we were at a dinner party hosted by one of Jack's business associates, and I was chatting with a few of the wives when Vanessa strolled over with a champagne flute in hand. "Oh, Chloe," she said in a sickeningly sweet voice, "that's an interesting outfit." I didn't realize the librarian look was back in style until I looked down at my knee-length skirt and blouse, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "I think it's appropriate for a dinner party," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Vanessa laughed with a sound like a tinkling glass. "Of course you do, sweetie." I refrained from pointing out that As the weeks passed, Vanessa's behavior became more daring. She began sharing pictures from our gatherings on social media, always making sure to crop me out or block my face. The captions were thinly veiled insults about my appearance or personality. One day, as I was scrolling through my feed, I came across a particularly nasty post where Vanessa had uploaded a photo of herself next to an image of a nightclub. Unflattering photo of me with the caption, "Who do you think is a better match for Jack?" I felt my cheeks burn with rage and embarrassment as I read the comments, the majority of which were in Vanessa's favor. At the end of the post, she added, it looked like everyone had spoken, and I decided to confront Jack about the situation when he got home from work that evening. "Jack, we need to talk about Vanessa," I said as he walked through the "I'll talk to her and tell her to take it down." "But that's not enough," he muttered, his voice trembling a little. "I want you to tell her to stay away from us and not attend our parties anymore." Jack ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "What's she done?" he sighed, loosening his tie. I showed him the post on my phone. His face darkened as he scrolled through it. "Business partner, I can't just ban her from social events, so I'm just supposed to put up with her bullying me." I asked my voice to rise, but Jack said, looking hurt, "You know you're the only one I love." I pulled away from him, but he said, "I'll talk to her and make it clear that this behavior isn't okay. But you'd have to understand that I can't completely cut her out without risking my business relationships." This made me angry. As the weeks went by, Vanessa's behavior became more brazen at every party or gathering. She seemed to make it her mission to get under my skin and get closer to Jack. One particularly memorable evening was when we were at a cocktail party hosted by one of Jack's friends. His words should have reassured me, but I couldn't help but wonder as I went to bed that night that this was only the beginning of our problems. Coworkers, I had dressed simply but elegantly in black for the event. I felt confident and at ease, but that feeling didn't last long because Vanessa walked in wearing a tight red dress that left little room for interpretation. Her eyes instantly went to Jack, and she made a beeline for us. She completely ignored me, saying, "You look absolutely dashing tonight." Before either of us could reply, she put her hand on Jack's arm and stroked it. As we walked away, I couldn't help but feel a slight sense of victory, but it was fleeting because I watched Vanessa repeatedly try to get Jack alone by calling him over to talk business or asking him to help her with some made-up issue. To his credit, Jack rebuffed her advances. It was a mild attempt to dance with me for old time's sake, and I felt my blood start to boil. "Thank you, Vanessa, but I'm here with my wife. Maybe another time." Vanessa's attempts to damage our relationship became more frequent and public over the next few weeks. At parties, she would loudly reminisce about their time together, specifically excluding me from the conversation, and post provocative comments on Jack's social media, always reminding him of their shared history. However, the constant attention was wearing on both of us, and she always made sure to include me in the conversation or quickly return to my side. When Vanessa arrived fashionably late for Tom's birthday party, she was wearing a dress that looked more appropriate for a red carpet than a backyard barbecue. She smirked as she made her entrance, locking eyes with me and saying, "Oh, Chloe," in a voice that was dripping with fake concern. "You poor thing, didn't you get the memo?" The crowd laughed, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment as Jack, who had been talking, spoke. Before Jack could react, I felt something cold and wet seep through my clothes. I looked down in shock to see red wine spreading across the front of my dress. Vanessa stood before me, empty glass in hand, her face a picture of faintness. He quickly made his way to my side and said, "That's enough, Vanessa." His voice was low and angry. "You need to stop this childish behavior," he said. As I stood there, wine dripping from my clothes, feeling humiliated and angry, something inside of me snapped. "You know what, Vanessa?" I said, my voice steady and clear. "I'd rather wear this stained dress than spend another minute pretending to be civil with you. Your behavior is pathetic and embarrassing, if you'll excuse me." "Oh no," she gasped at my awkwardness. "To be honest, that stain is an improvement on that awful outfit." The party fell silent, and everyone was watching us. Turning to Jack, who was staring at Vanessa with a mix of shock and disgust, I said, "Let's go home." As we made our way to the exit, I heard Vanessa's shrill voice behind us. "Jack, darling, don't go. Stay, and I'll take good care of you." Jack didn't even turn around. Instead, he put his arm around me and said, "The only person I want taking care of me is my wife." As we drove home in silence, I couldn't help but feel that a line had been crossed because Vanessa had revealed her true feelings. Colors, and there was no turning back. One sunny morning, Jack entered our bedroom with a serious expression on his face. He told Chloe, "I have to go on a business trip. It's important for the company. I'll be gone for about a week." I nodded, trying to ignore the slight churn in my stomach and uneasiness. "Okay, when do you leave tomorrow morning?" he said. "I'm sorry for the short notice." Suddenly, I forced a smile, and he said, "It's fine. I understand your business is important." The following day, Jack left for his trip, and I was left alone in our home. The week went by slowly as I was absorbed in work to keep my mind off the house's emptiness. On Friday night, I was surprised when my phone rang and heard Vanessa Chloe's sickeningly sweet voice says, "I'm planning a small get-together tonight for just a small group of 8 people, and I'd love for you and Jack to come." I hesitated because, well, Jack's actually out of town on business, but Vanessa didn't sound disappointed at all. "But you should come anyway. It'll be a great opportunity for us to put the past behind us and start over." "What do you think?" My instinct told me to say no, but I was curious, so I said hesitantly, "Oh, come on, Vanessa, press. It's at El Chateau. You know the place, right? Dairy exclusive. It'll be fun, I promise." "All right," I said, making a snap decision. "I'll be there at what time?" "Wonderful," Vanessa exclaimed. At exactly 8 o'clock, I entered the chow and saw a happy group of Jack's friends, including Vanessa, seated at a table. For a moment, I thought everything would go smoothly, but as I got closer, I realized that there was nowhere to sit. Vanessa got up, her eyes shining with hate, and she said loudly, "Oh, Chloe," her voice brimming with foamy concern. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You see, we're full up here. There's no room for. The table fell silent, everyone looking uncomfortable, but no one speaking up. I laughed, genuinely amused by Vanessa's pitiful attempt at humiliation. Then I turned and called out, "Excuse me, could I speak to the restaurant manager?" The restaurant manager came over to her table. Extra as she twirled, showing off her designer dress. "This is a place for people who belong, Chloe. Beautiful people, successful people. Maybe you should try the diner down the street. I heard they do a mean hot dog." He asked, looking between Vanessa and me, "Is there a problem here?" Before Vanessa could say anything, I smiled at the manager and said, "No problem at all. I was just wondering if I could join this lovely group for dinner." The manager smiled kindly at me. "Of course, madam. Let me get you a comfortable chair right away." As he hurried off, Vanessa's face contorted with anger. "Excuse me, I booked this table for 8 people, but she wasn't invited and there's no room for her here." A collective gasp went around the table. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, and Jack's friends stared at me in shock. One of them, Tom, said, "But Chloe, I thought you were an accountant," which is how Jack introduced you to us. I smiled, shrugging my shoulders modestly. "I am an accountant. I do the accounting." I apologize for any confusion this may have caused. The atmosphere at the table changed drastically as Vanessa's face turned a deep shade of red, a mixture of embarrassment and anger. Jack's friends, who had remained silent during Vanessa's tirade, now jumped at the chance to invite me to join them. "Chloe, please sit with us. We'd love to hear more about your restaurant. I've never been one to flaunt my wealth. I prefer to judge people by their character rather than their bank account." As I was about to leave, I couldn't help but add, "There's a lovely diner down the street. I hear they do a mean hot dog. You might want to try it sometime." I turned to the manager and asked her to make sure my husband's friends were taken care of because the bill was on me tonight. I then left the restaurant, leaving behind a stunned silence and a thoroughly humiliated face. I told Vanessa about the incident over dinner when Jack got back from his business trip a few days later. "You should have seen her face, Jack." I laughed. I don't think I've ever seen anyone turn that shade of red for Jack. Jack shook his head and laughed. "I can't believe she thought she could embarrass you like that." Chloe, as we finished our meal, I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me. Vanessa's attempt to humiliate me had backfired spectacularly, and in the process it had brought Jack and me closer together. A few weeks passed quickly after the incident at El Chateau. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, and the memory of Vanessa's humiliation had subsided into a humorous story that Jack and I occasionally discussed over dinner. One crest-bottom morning, I was going through my emails when I came across an intriguing message. An invitation to take part in the prestigious Entrepreneur of the Year award program, specifically in the Successful Entrepreneurial Debut category. My heart skipped a beat as I read the details. This was a big acknowledgement of my efforts and accomplishments with the restaurant, and we decided to go together to the event. On the night of the awards, we dressed to the nines. Jack looked amazing in his tuxedo, and I wore an elegant, understated gown that gave me a sense of power and confidence. The venue was amazing, and as we mixed, I saw the most powerful and successful people in the city. I was admiring the intricate ice sculpture when a familiar voice hissed in my ear, asking, "What are you doing here?" I turned to see Vanessa glaring at me, her face twisted with anger and disbelief that I was invited. There were many familiar faces, friends, acquaintances, and several of Jack's business associates. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and excitement. At one point, Jack excused himself to chat with some colleagues, leaving me by the champagne fountain. Vanessa's eyes narrowed when I showed her my invitation. "This is an event for the wealthy and successful people of this city, like my father and me. You don't belong here, you upstart. How dare you try to infiltrate our world? Get out before you embarrass yourself." I stayed composed and scanned the room until I found the person I was looking for. I smiled and waved to 2 older, distinguished men in immaculate suits who were chatting across the room. When they got to us, I ignored her and concentrated on the men. I gave one of them a warm embrace and kissed his cheek, saying, "Dad, I'm so glad you could make it." Then I turned to the other man and gave him a warm handshake, which he accepted. "Mr. Thompson, it's wonderful to see you again." Vanessa's mouth dropped when she recognized the second man, and she turned to him, her voice shrill with disbelief. "Daddy, what are you doing? How can you possibly be friendly with this?" As he listened to his daughter's outburst, Mr. Thompson's face turned a deep red. His eyes, which were normally calm and calculating, were now blazing with fury. He thundered, making Vanessa wince. He pointed to my father, William Carter, one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the nation and my valued business partner. Your naive remarks could jeopardize a multi-million-dollar deal. Whitening in shock, she refused to back down and instead canceled the deal, saying, "Daddy, we don't need to do business with her family. They're beneath us." Mr. Thompson's face model was furious, with red spots on his cheeks and forehead. His voice rose to a shout that made heads turn in the ballroom. "That's enough. Your behavior is inexcusable," he said, jutting a finger at Vanessa. "From this point on, you're cut off. No more allowance, no more credit cards, and that fancy flat you love." Vanessa's mouth opened in shock as her father turned to us and said, "Mr. Carter-Clough, please accept my deepest apologies for this disgraceful scene." He then turned back to his daughter and snapped, "Leave immediately. You've proven yourself unworthy of being here." Jack pushed through the crowd that had gathered around us, his face displaying a mixture of concern and anger. "What's going on here?" he demanded before anyone could respond. Spotted Vanessa and shook his head in disgust. "I should have known then, and I remember exactly why I broke up with you, Vanessa. You never learned how to act in a polite society." Vanessa's composure finally broke, and tears started to fall, leaving mascara trails behind her. "Daddy, please," she cried, reaching for Mr. Thompson's arm. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. Please don't do this," he said coldly, turning his back. When it came time for the awards ceremony, I found myself walking onto the stage in a matter of days as my name was called for the Successful Entrepreneurial Debut category. As I accepted the award, I saw Vanessa standing alone in the middle of the ballroom, her shoulders shaking with sobs, mascara streaking her cheeks. The crowd around us gradually dispersed, leaving her alone in her humiliation. The golden statue found its place on our mantelpiece as a silent reminder of that memorable night. Jack and I continued to attend parties with his friends and business associates without Vanessa's toxic presence. Of my father and Jack in the audience, they were on their feet applauding wildly, their faces beaming with pride. Their enthusiasm was contagious, and I felt a wave of joy and accomplishment wash over me in the weeks after the award ceremony. I noticed how much more fun these parties have been lately, and as I was putting on my earrings one evening, Jack came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. I smiled at him in the mirror and was thinking the same thing. It's amazing how one person's absence can change the entire experience. The atmosphere was lighter, the conversations were more genuine, and the laughter was more frequent. I'd overheard Tom talking to his wife at the last party, and it seems like there is a rumor that Mr. Thompson sent Vanessa to another state because he didn't want her to embarrass him or the family business anymore. Dynamic Jack nodded his expression thoughtfully. "Speaking of absence, have you heard anything about Vanessa lately?" I shook my head, but she seems to have disappeared completely. As we drove to the party, I thought about how much my life had changed over the past year, from the difficulties with Vanessa to the unexpected recognition of my business acumen. It had been a whirlwind of experiences, but my relationship with Jack had only gotten stronger as a result of it all. After her behavior at the awards ceremony, I turned to face him, and he adjusted his tie. It's a shame, really, that she never learned to appreciate or use it wisely. Eventually find her way. After all, everyone deserves the opportunity to develop and become a better version of themselves. Who knows, perhaps a new beginning in a different state would be exactly what she needed. For the time being, though, I was happy to sway in my husband's arms while surrounded by friends who were thankful for the life we had created. Collectively,